Okay. Um, yeah. So, so somebody asked you to try out create a React app, right? For a new React app. They said it was going to be awesome. They said you just needed to learn React and JavaScript. So you jumped in. You created your new app. But as you jumped in, you saw that you had to learn TypeScript, you had to learn CSS, you had to learn this whole lot of things, uh, which, yeah, which probably made you feel like this frog. Uh, so when I shared this meme on my Twitter, it kind of resonated with a lot of people, which is when I really decided that this talk will probably be impactful. So hi, everybody. My name is Pavithra Kodmad, alias PK. And you can follow me on Twitter at pkodmad. And I also share my thoughts on tech and JavaScript and on my YouTube channel, which is Kodmad. Kodmad. The only thing that ties together all these things is my profile picture. And so if you see that, that's me. So today's topic of my talk is about next generation front end tooling. This is mainly to talk about all the tooling that we use on JS and how it's being simplified in the next generation. So to start with, let's look at why JS even needs tooling, right? So JavaScript is a language that needs tooling because it does not have any compilation time. You write JavaScript and it runs directly on the browser. There is no static typing. It's a dynamically typed language. And for a very, very long time, unnecessarily long time, JavaScript did not have a module system. So, what are the commonly used tools to bridge this gap? We use a compiler to compile types that we have added over on top of JavaScript. It could be TSC, or if you are one of those people using Flow, then that too. You use Babel transforms so that you can use the latest features of the language even in old browsers. So this transforms your latest ES JavaScript into whatever old browsers also can understand because compatibility. To process your CSS and post CSS, you use CSS modules and post CSS. To test your code, you use testing tools like Jest, Ava, uh, yeah. And finally, you use bundlers because the code you write is not the code you ship. And all of these bundlers act as both a tool to kind of do these tasks and then bundle all of your code ready to be shipped. So, in spite of all of these tools being state of the art and the ones that are being used in production right now in all large companies and even by indie developers, we face a lot of problems. Hot module reloading kind of sucks. It works sometimes, it doesn't work sometimes, and I've kind of, in my experience, stopped relying on it. Source maps is another major issue for me, which stops you from debugging effectively, especially production issues. The tragedy of configuration. If you don't have at least like three types of configurations in your JavaScript project, is that even a modern JavaScript project? And everything is slow. At least this is a complaint for me in recent years. Uh, all the things we use are so slow. As the code base kind of increases in size, that's directly proportional to like the slowness of your tools. If you don't agree with me, like listen to Ivanu, right? Oops. Okay. So if you listen to that talk, it basically says he basically tells you like how how he doesn't even work on projects which don't start up really fast, and that's his motivation, at least, to build the tools that he does. So In recent times, we have decided to kind of act on top of these things, on these problems, and we are trying, the community is trying to mitigate the problems caused by the slowness caused by bundlers uh, uh, and all these modern tools. And the catalyst for these changes in the past year is the introduction of ES modules. So, like I said before, JavaScript for a very, very long time did not have a module system. But with the introduction of ES modules in ECMAScript 2016, we now have platform support for modules. We are not co-opting CommonJS, which was invented in 2009 for Node.js sake, and we're not co-opting that for the browser anymore. We have our own module system. It's new, uh, and it's been built according to modern requirements. It came in ES6, like I said, and there is still the conversion problems of CommonJS being converted to ESM or ESM being converted to CommonJS in bundlers and things like that. And most importantly, ES modules acted as a catalyst for new ideas to come into our front-end tooling community. Another major trend that's like gripping the JS world is to have tooling, JavaScript tooling, not written in JavaScript. One major example of this is ES Build, which is a new bundler written in Golang. And its major USP is that it is very, very fast. It's unreal, kind of like how fast it is. If you read one of the latest blogs that the author wrote, he said that many people think when they run ES build that it isn't working correctly because it's so fast and it finishes bundling so fast. And for those who are interested more, you should go read this page where the author explains why ES build is so fast. It's mainly being written in Go, how parallelized it is. It's really worth your time to read this page. So, with all of these new catalysts, what we can conclude is ECMAScript modules is amazing for development. I still wouldn't recommend you to serve ESM to your users in production because it could run up to like hundreds of files, and you don't want to be sending hundreds of files over the wire to your customers. But as a developer working in your local environment, you can afford to do that, and it allows better caching for you. So the first kind of tool that came up with this idea was this called Web Dev Server. So this comes under an umbrella called Modern Web, who want to reduce the amount of tooling that we use in JavaScript, who want to reduce that fatigue that new developers go through, and with that goal in mind, they are building different tools, and you should go check them out. They're also powered, most of these are powered all of these are powered by ESBuild. The next iteration kind of that came in the community was Snowpack. So Snowpack is another a front-end build tool with the same kind of goals. And the latest among these, which is gaining a lot of traction in the community, is Wheat.js. So Wheat.js is a library that was written by Ivan Yu, the guy who wrote Vue.js, and yeah, and it claims to be the next generation of front-end tooling, and mostly the focus of this talk. So Vue.js is a very pragmatic little bundler. It tries to be practical, and it tries to be more. It tries to take an approach where convention is more important than configuration. It tries to also be a higher level tool than Webpack. Webpack is one where you have to configure every little thing. And now that we as a community have been using bundlers for such a long time, Vue.js decides to take some things into its own hand and makes those decisions for you as a developer. So it can be regarded as a higher level tool. So if you were to use Vue.js, what would you have to be excited about? And What am I excited about? I'd like to share that with you. So my favorite Vue.js features. So the first one, and the first three that I'll show are the ones that Wheat itself is proud of, and most of the community is very excited about. The first one is instant server start and file load. So this is the most popular selling point of Vue.js. While I could show you my little to do app that I So while I could show you my little to-do app that I wrote, yeah, I'll show it to you, right? So the community behind Wheat is so amazing that they created this little plugin that is so easy to use. Basically, you can start your Wheat app on your VS Code and preview it right there. It's written by one of my favorite developers, Anthony Fu. You should follow him on Twitter. So in this you can see that it's all started now, and one of the coolest things that I felt was the hot module reloading, right? So every time I change anything, it's instant and it's reliable. So I change the background of this button, and yeah, it's instant. And similarly for JavaScript too. But if you want to see more about this, you should watch the podcast, not the podcast, the Twitch stream the Twitch stream recording that Sunil Pai did with Jason Lengstorff. And in that, he shows he compares how Create React app compares to compares with Webpack and with Wheat, which is pretty cool. I link to it at the end of my talk. So this is something that Wheat is really proud of. The next is HMR support for Vue.js and React.js. So what I liked about Wheat was, even though the author is very much embedded in the Vue.js ecosystem, they want Wheat to be available to to any framework, to vanilla Java, to people who use vanilla JavaScript, to people who use Vue.js, and people who use React.js. So out of the box, they give you support for React.js and Vue.js. And if you've heard the latest, I heard Svelte is also going to be moving to Wheat in its next iteration. So that's pretty cool. The next is the TypeScript and JSX support that it provides out of the box. So this is what I mean when I say Wheat is a higher level tool. Uh, every time, so if you have to use TypeScript or JSX in your with the Webpack bundler, you have to write those loaders, right? And Webpack, so it's pretty well known that the community is using these both, but Webpack acts ignorant, and you have to provide it the loader, and things can go wrong there. And it's more friction. But Wheat assumes that if your file extension ends with TS or JSX, then it'll treat them that way by default, and you don't have to do anything for it, which I thought was pretty cool. So after this, I'm going to talk about the features that I personally found awesome, and yeah. So the next feature that I really liked was this pre-bundling, is what they call it. But what it essentially means is that if you are using any libraries or things in your application, uh, we will not make them ES run as ES modules by default, because that may be detrimental, right? You don't really care about how these libraries are loaded, so it kind of pre-bundles them and puts them out. And yeah, I thought that was a very pragmatic approach from Wheat. So the point is not to go all in on ESM, right? The point is to leverage ESM to make things faster. And if sometimes ESM is not the solution, then Wheat accepts that, which I thought was a great direction for it to move in. The next amazing thing about Wheat was it supports multiple entry points by default. So this is something that Next.js, Nuxt.js, and all these new frameworks uh, they support. So it should be easy to run those things with Wheat in the future because multiple entry points is something that Wheat advocates for. Uh, you can read about it in its documentation if I can find it. So here, if you look at multiple multi-page app, yeah. So if you have an index HTML, let me increase. If you have an index HTML here and here, you need to provide this as rollup options. If I'm not mentioned, we uses rollup inside it. So your dev build is all ES build, but your production build will be using rollup. So multiple entry points, yay. The next exciting thing for me that Snowpack also doesn't support is library mode. So you can use Speed.js for your libraries, npm libraries. If you write one, you can use the power of Speed.js in them. An example of this is so yeah, spoiler alert. For some time, I've been trying to build a storybook integration with Vue.js, and for the plugin that I wrote for it, I tried using Rollup. I also tried using Wheat, and Wheat kind of works out of the box. So you have to do some configuration for it, which is not that much, I thought. So you say build and you say lib, and you provided the entry and the name of the library and the formats in which you want the library to be built in. So in my case, it builds in CJS, it builds in ES, and it builds in UMD here, as I have specified here. And you can also have externals and everything that was available with Rollup or Webpack also on demand. Yeah. The next kind of delightful feature I found of Wheat was the way it handled image assets. So this I can demonstrate at least in my project. That I recently made called where my cat kind of plays Sokaban. Uh, so in here, I wrote. So this is a vanilla JS project that I initially served just with ESM, but then I later went in and added Vue.js, and I was pleasantly surprised to see how intuitive it was. I didn't have to do much at all. I don't even have a Vue config. If you see, so all I did was run it, and it created all these files for me. And sometimes it said that okay, you need a separate JPG, but sometimes it just inlined the images, like for my favicon or for some CSS that I had to. CSS background that I had to, which I thought was very cool, and I know one of those reasons why I fell in love with it. The next feature was dynamic imports polyfill. ES modules gave us static import. Static import is where you say import dash from dash, and it's imported by default. But dynamic import is where you use import as a function, and you import files on demand dynamically. So this is a relatively new feature and not supported by even new browsers. So what we decided was to go ahead and polyfill it by default because it thinks that it is an important feature for you. And yeah, I thought that was really thoughtful of the team. And the last feature that got me, that completely converted me to a Wheat fan, was this universal plugin support. So this is kind of a collaboration between Wheat, Rollup, and WMR. WMR is another bundler that was developed by Jason Miller, the creator of Preact. So there they kind of decided and came to a mutual understanding that they would all support each other's plugin formats, right? So basically, Wheat selling point is that if you have a Rollup plugin, that'll work automatically on Wheat, and you can add more Wheat specific stuff to it, uh, which is kind of revolutionary if you ask me. Like, every single tool has their own way of writing plugins, and this trend of having a universal plugin uh, is something worth to watch out for, and it will make like the life of new developers, the life of community members, much simpler. So, yeah, with all of this said, none of this is right now usable for large production apps, at least. There are tons of, let me be at least clear about that. There are many things that these tools still have to work on before you can convert your enterprise app or your B2C app. Uh, to wheat, but they all these trends of building of using ESM for development of new CSS approaches like Tailwind or Windy, and using Rust, Go, or Wasm for front-end tooling. And the emergence of Dino, which you can't discount. Like, Dino is moving fast, and I even saw Next.js like framework built on top of Dino, which is like a whole new ecosystem. So all of this has been dubbed as the third age of JavaScript. Like, the first age was before Node, and then second age was Node and whatever came with it, and now we are entering into a third age. Like, Swikes has written Sean has written a blog post on this, which is really interesting. um, yeah, so I really do believe that it this might be true, and with this new emergence of ecosystems, I feel there is a lot of space for community contributions in whatever little way. Like, if you're starting a side project, use Wheat or Snowpack. Uh, and a lot of opportunities for contribution. People looking to break into open source have a whole new landscape to start building stuff. So, uh, yeah, that's basically my talk. And if you're interested to learn more about Wheat and this all the new tools that are coming as next generation front end tooling, you can look up these resources. This is the first one is a Twitch stream that Ivan New did for GitHub, which I thought was pretty interesting. The second one is Sunil Pai's demo of Wheat. And the third one is this interesting podcast where Jason Miller explained why he made WMR and about universal plugins and all. The third is a blog post on, I mean, the next one is a blog post on Wheat 2 and what features came out of it. That kind of really helped me put this talk together. Um, Pika and Snowpack, they have a this podcast episode was very interesting. It kind of told me how uh, like how they are kind of Webpack, Snowpack, Wheat are kind of collaborating with even ESBuild. Uh, like, if you see the recent work they did on top level Await, they know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and I feel that these ecosystems might merge somewhere in the future. Uh, and right now they're all in experimental mode, so this was an interesting podcast. VJ's website, which is very well done and very informative, and this is the blog post that I spoke about, which Sean Wang wrote. So yeah, that was my talk on next gen front end tooling. If you are interested in following the news about Wheat and stuff that's happening, follow me on Twitter. I I am continuously interested in news about this, or hit me up if you want to know about more about next gen front end tooling. Yeah, that's my talk.